The Dreamer, Chapter 3. Notes. Territory bewildering. Culture unfamiliar and unnerving. Preparatory education inadequate and useless. Discouraged and duly humbled. Aid from the captain essential. Exceptionally shrewd and daring. And there is something else. Behavior is forbearing. Generous. He is a good man. After spending a late night painstakingly detailing the audacious procedure, counterintuitive as it was, and what hypothesis could be gathered from it, I slept soundly until I was awakened the next morning by the sound of voices. Light flooded the room, and I studied my surroundings. The room was rather sparse. The bed and desk I already mentioned. The walls were naked but for a cabinet in the corner and a trunk against the opposite wall. I was used to sparse. It reminded me of my dorm at the university. Only essentials, no distractions. The work was everything and must be unhindered. There was commotion outside. Footsteps on the upper deck. The men were gathering. I jumped out of bed, collected a pencil and some paper, and I hurried out the door. 100 men, it seemed, had gathered together, perhaps the entire crew, all of their attention on something located at the mast of the ship. I began to elbow my way into the crowd. It was not difficult to do, my small stature allowing me to duck under their arms, but also I found that when I did touch the men, as soon as they set eyes on me, they would practically shrink away from me, sometimes lifting their hats politely. I stopped and gaped at what I saw, shock and horror rendering me immobile and suddenly nauseous. Before me was a man, stripped naked to the waist, his hands bound around the mast, his back facing me. I recognized him from yesterday. He was the man with the dice. Behind him was a man I did not recognize, holding a long, black, wicked whip up over his head, ready to bring it down onto the exposed back of the poor, helpless soul. I was horrified. I wanted to look away, but I found myself walking closer. I had never seen anything so barbaric, and my stomach churned and tightened in protest. Breaking into a run, I rushed towards the captain, knocking shoulders along my way, heedless of my direction, creating quite a ruckus in my stumbling progress. I tripped and lurched forward, falling on my knees. A small gust of wind at my cheek, so slight was the gust, and yet the powerful crack that accompanied it was almost deafening. I closed my eyes instinctively. When I opened my eyes, I saw the whip lying on the floor between myself and the executioner. The man was pale, and his knees seemed unsteady. He swore and put a hand to his forehead. "Thunder and turf! Are you crazy, lass? I could have killed you!" My eyes found the captain. He, too, looked shocked. His eyes were wide and a set of gloves at his feet as though he'd been holding them at his side, and they slipped from his hand. He took a step towards me, and I jumped up and rushed the rest of the way to him. By the time I was next to him, every gaze rested on us. "What is the meaning of this, Captain? This is barbaric." Finley stepped out from the crowd to address me. "Miss Madeira, you should not be here. It is no place for a woman." "That is insulting, sir." "And you know nothing of the circumstances," he finished. The captain said nothing. He simply stood very still and watched me while his henchman cautiously picked up his whip. "Then explain them to me." My gaze did not waver from the captain's stern countenance. Again Finley answered, "Tipkins is being brought to justice." "Justice?" I shook my head. "Captain," I said accusatorily, "surely he should know better. Justice requires court, testimony, and then judgment. He requires a proper hearing." Finally the captain spoke. "Step back, miss. It is the mark of a civilized society. If we cannot have justice, what do we have?" "Move aside," the captain told me, his voice like ice. He told his henchman to ready the whip. I stayed where I was, not out of active disobedience, but more because I was too disappointed to move, though looking back I see the fault in my action. The men began to murmur, and the large, still crowd started to move. "Miss, please, step out of the way," Finley begged. "Miss Madeira," the captain's hard voice shook me out of my disappointed stupor. I did think more of him than to allow such injustice to occur on his own ship. But what could I do? I turned to go, passing closely by the accused. Tidkins, who no one had been paying attention to, had somehow freed his hands. To my horror, he grabbed me as I passed him, and he had unaccountably acquired a dagger. I cried out in surprise and pain when, with little effort, he twisted my arm behind my back and held the deadly dagger to my throat. Tidkins held me close to him, his face next to mine, his breath in my ear. "Ye bilge-sucking fool! What ye be doing now, Captain?" he laughed. My arm shot out for a blow to his ribs, but Tidkins caught my hand and forced it down against my side. I struggled and I strained, every muscle bursting in an attempt to escape, but with no use. He held me still with one arm around my middle, binding my arms to my side. His other hand held a knife that was pressed to my throat. He nuzzled my ear, and he sneered, "Aye, a feisty lass, ain't ye? I be having some fun with ye yet." Nothing could compare to that terrifying sensation of helplessness and danger. My eyes frantically searched for the captain. The captain stood looking not at me, but at Tipkin, his eyes cool and calculating. Finley begged, "Let her go, Charles." Charles laughed again. "No, I don't be thinking I will." "What are you going to do?" Finley said. "You have nowhere to go, and you're far outnumbered." "Well, what ye be saying but the first point? I don't be arguing with thee, Finn. But the last? We'll just be seeing about that." Captain Tucker took a step forward, and Tip increased the pressure of the knife on my throat, slightly piercing my skin. I felt the sting, as well as the bead of blood that escaped and trickled down the neck of my new dress. The captain stilled. A muscle moved in his jaw. Tipkins turned to the sailors and addressed them. His grip on me changed, becoming less firm, more caressing. His fingers spreading apart, their pressure changing. Bile raised in my throat. What say ye, me buckos? Is Finley here right? Am I to be outnumbered by ye?" He smiled confidently. "Are you really the patsy puddins he says ye be? I tell you this, boys, I ain't be having no qualms about sharing the wench now with ye if ye be taking my side." The crowd of men began to murmur. "What are you suggesting?" Finley asked, shocked. "Charles, you wouldn't. Don't make things worse for yourself." "Pretty, ain't she?" Tidkins continued, turning his face towards me and taking a deep breath. "The captain's wench. He always be saving the best for hisself, don't he?" "Tip, leave her alone," Finley pled again. Tipkins said, "This ain't be no ship. We be in a prison here, mates. Always he be telling us where to go and what we be doing. Ugh! Are we men or are we animals? We be dancing with Jack Ketch soon as we reach port if we be going against the captain," a disembodied voice called from the crowd, though others moved forward, tempted by his offer. "Have our necks stretched for a bit of fun?" another voice from the rear called. "You crazy to be thinking so, Piney?" "You're talking mutiny, Tip," Finley exclaimed. "Mutiny," Tipkins scoffed. "We be standing up under oppression, more like. We won't be hanged for defending ourselves." He leaned down to kiss me. "And enjoying the spoils." The dagger he held to my throat he brought down a fraction and flicked it on the top of those pretty buttons of my dress. The button went flying and dropped quietly on the deck at my feet. The sound seemed very loud. The next button quickly followed, exposing my neck and the beginning swell of my bosom. The world darkened, and I nearly swooned. "Please don't," I whispered, looking at the hungry gazes of the men. "She be a sweet round wench, ain't she?" another man called. "Sweet as nectar." "Leave her be. You be keyholed and sent to Davy Jones' locker for a spot of fun," came another voice. Tipkins caressed my neck. Some of the men began to push forward, their hands on their cutlasses, their eyes on me. Finley He let them pass. He put his hand on the hilt of his cutlass as though to draw it, and I prayed that he might, but it remained where it was, and he let them pass. They knocked his shoulders as they went, the heavy cross bouncing against his ribs. "Finley, save me!" I cried. His eyes locked with mine, but still he did nothing. But as I looked for the captain, he was nowhere in sight. "Where be the captain?" one of them said. "Find him!" Tipkins cried. "He can't be gone far." It was then that the boom swung as though out of nowhere and crashed into the back of Tipkins' head. Tipkins toppled forward and collapsed on top of me, though he didn't remain there for long. As soon as he fell, he was lifted up again and tossed away. The crew stopped and stared, the rebels wisely sheathing their knives as they watched the captain throw Tipkins against the mast and then again onto the side of the ship. The captain's face was a mask of rage, his features barely recognizable, crimson and savage, and he beat the unconscious man mercilessly with his fists. Blood was everywhere, on Tipkins, on the captain, and on me, who was still lying on the deck where I fell. "Get back!" Finley finally shouted at the men. They obeyed this time. His cutlass, as well as his gun, were drawn, and he held them high. He turned to Tucker. Captain, you'll be killing him, sir!" But it was not enough. We both knew it was not enough. The captain seemed unaware of the blood, unaware of the pain he must be feeling in his hands. Did he even see the man himself as he hit him with his fists again and again? Captain, look, the girl! There's so much blood! Heaven help us!" The captain finally stopped, and Tipkins crumpled to the floor. He turned and looked at me. He seemed surprised to find me there. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like he'd never seen me before. I felt like an intruder. His eyes widened, his gaze not on my face, but on my dress. I weakly looked down and saw what had caught his attention. Blood was streaked across my dress, the dagger deep in my side. The light was dim, the curtains closed, and a single candle burned. A small bead of wax dripped down the side of the candle and dropped onto the surface of the desk. The wood was dry and cracked. I closed my eyes again. I closed them tightly to block out the sudden memory that assailed me, but it was too late. I couldn't stop it, and I whimpered. I felt someone was in the room. The captain. How old he seemed. Flecks of gray in his hair that I hadn't noticed before. He was reaching for something in his desk. A compass. "Captain? You see where your foolhardiness has gotten you?" His voice was hard. He didn't look at me. His eyes. Oh, the look in them. I closed my own tightly to block out the memory. My voice trailed off and I whimpered. Water was brought to my lips, and when I moved to drink it, I felt pain in my side. I winced and the water dripped down my chin. A handkerchief, none too gently, dabbed it up. "Finley should be back any minute," the captain said. "I must go." He sounded gruff, sullen, seemingly eager to be off. I only came in for the compass. Lust, ruthlessness, those words meant nothing to me until today. "Miss Madeira, please," he bit. "Restrain yourself until Finley returns. I'm unsuited to this." I choked. My mind, usually my friend, it won't stop. It goes back and back to that moment. Tears flowed from my eyes. I couldn't stop them no matter how hard I fought. "You could have been killed," he answered tightly. "One false move and your life is over. Is that what you want to hear? Without introspection, some caution. I apologize, Miss Madeira. I beg you, just stop weeping." I would have nodded if I could have summoned up the energy, but the effort was beyond me. "Thank you. You are right. Yes, that is what I ought to hear. Only the truth matters. Everything else is insufficient. Thank you for your candor." "Candor? A woman who wants candor?" "I will, and I must confess, I admit it now. I don't belong here." "On a ship full of hardened men? At last you are beginning to see," he said. "Fate is mistaken," I continued. "What do you mean?" he said. "I can't do this. Do you understand?" I was looking at the ceiling. I was not speaking to the captain. I had never felt so raw and so weak. Suddenly, I was so small. The weight I had been called to bear was just too great. "You don't have to do anything," the captain told me. He seemed very sure. I looked at him. "I don't?" He shook his head. He looked so tired. "No. Just rest. Recover. Stay within the cabin." "You're sure? You are sure, Captain? You wouldn't tell an untruth to spare my feelings, I know." He nodded. His eyes were solemn, and I noticed that his nose was long and slightly crooked, as though it had once been broken. There were dark whiskers on his face, the beginnings of a beard around his jawline and up his wide plane of his cheeks. His dark eyes tilted downwards, giving him a slightly sad expression, even when he was angry, or serious, as he was now. Serious with a touch of melancholy. Geophysics, nanoscience, nanotechnology, these have been my only comfort. Now, strange. Your eyes. I like them. My eyes? I found myself caught in an unusual warm fog that kept me disoriented and jumbled, but it wasn't an unpleasant sensation. It soothed me, somehow, and I didn't bother to analyze why. Strange thinking back on it now. Hormones, evolution, psychological tricks of survival, introspection was forgotten. Instead, I was so paralyzed by the warm, peaceful glow that all I could do was sigh and finally fall asleep.